Okay, let's just post live Twitter. Okay. Cool. So let's get started. I generated an application for a Rails app with using authentication-zero. Okay. I don't know how to turn on comments without. Okay. I'm watching my comments on my phone, but I don't know how to not have it play the video yet. Okay. So I'll just. Yeah, I wanted to. Yeah, so we're using authentication-zero gem and we've scaffolded custom authentication. So I would like to add passkeys here. The passkeys are basically, they are private public key pairs that are kind of packed. Yeah, it's based on public key cryptography, and passkeys are basically packed into something that's convenient to use. So on devices like a computer or a phone, you would usually you're usually asked for biometric identification. So in this case, this is just a demo page. I can register a passkey, and then when I try to authenticate, it asks me for the same passkey, and I'm logged in. So these passkeys are built on this open web authn protocol, and I want to show you how to add this functionality to an existing application. For that we will use Rodauth, but we will not convert the existing authentication to use Rodauth, but we'll actually use it as a framework. Sorry, we won't use it as a framework, but we'll use it as a library. So Rodauth has this interface that we don't intervene in how authentication is handled, but we just use it for its functionality. I'll start by adding the Rodauth Rails gem to the gem file, and also we'll add the web authn library, or the web authn gem. In here we will just disable it being required by default, and we'll disable this. The reason we want to do this is because Rodauth Rails gem automatically inserts a rack middleware, but here specifically we don't want to Rodauth to handle any routing, so we just disable this behavior, these hooks. We'll set up a Rodauth object in the app.misc directory, and the reason why I'm using app.misc is because it doesn't really fall into any of these other categories, and I think it's generally most bigger applications have some objects that are not any of these, but don't deserve its dedicated directory. So yeah, so I'm using this one. misc Rodauth main, and we'll require the Rodauth Rails gem and also SQL core. Rodauth uses SQL and not active record, so we will going to require SQL, but it has integration that we'll see in a bit. We will create this object using Rodauth Rails lib, and we'll assign that to the Rodauth main constant. So this will return a class. So yeah, this is just assign it to a constant. It's like a class definition, but just looks a bit different. First thing we'll do is we'll set up a SQL database. So here in this project, I believe I'm using SQLite. So we'll load SQL's SQLite adapter, and we'll tell it we'll load this active record connection extension that comes installed with Rodauth Rails, and it basically tells SQL to use active records database connection instead of its own. We'll also tell it not to keep any global references so that it works better with reloading. The authentication-zero, it uses the table is called users. In Rodauth, the default table is called accounts, so we'll just say to use users, and also there is the password digest column, so we'll just tell Rodauth that as well, because the default is password hash digest. And yeah, and now I think this is the, if I try now loading this Rodauth object, I shouldn't get any errors. Yes, great. So we will now load the WebAuthn features. We'll load or plugins for Rodauth. We'll load WebAuthn, WebAuthn login, and WebAuthn autofill. Yeah, so this one, it provides two-factor authentication. This one allows logging in with a passkey. This one also provides creation and deletion of passkeys. And the last one, it provides the ability to log in with a passkey with this one without entering an email address. So we'll actually implement this kind of passkey login in our application. For these features, they require tables. So we'll say Rails generate Rodauth migration that's coming from the Rodauth Rails gem, and call it and say WebAuthn. Create WebAuthn, and we want to tweak it a bit. We want to tweak it a bit to reference the users table, but I also want to simplify the table names. So this table, it's storing just user identifiers for like WebAuthn identifiers assigned to each account. And this one stores the WebAuthn credentials. So I'll just name this one WebAuthn users and allow it to have a auto-incrementing primary ID, and basically I will tell it to reference says user. It will be a foreign key and it cannot be null. And this one it holds WebAuthn credentials, so I'll just call it like this. And here SQL uses actually composite primary keys, but Active Record doesn't support those, at least not fully yet. So I will just use a unique index instead. First, here we'll reference the user, and I don't know why this is not nullable, but I think it should not be. Yeah. So these are the columns that that Rodauth will use. This is some like credential identifier. This is the public key. So that's in this public private key pair. This is the public key that's stored on the server, and the private key is stored on the device. So the private key never, the server never sees the private key. So if this table is breached, there is nothing to steal. They only get the public key, which is useless, the attacker. So that's what makes them really secure. Yeah, well, I also wanted to add a unique index on user ID and WebAuthn ID, because yeah, the user needs to have a unique credential, and I'll make it unique index. I'll run the migrations. And now let's create an account here. I'll go to the sign up page. Okay. Let's see, userexample.com, secret. Great, I'm signed up. And now I would like to add, on this home page, I would like to add the ability to create passkeys. To do this, we will go to this home page. I'll add a new passkeys section, and we'll generate a form with URL. And now I would like to create a WebAuthn controller with the setup action. So I'll just go ahead and do that. Now. We'll raise generate controller WebAuthn. It will have setup auth. Yeah, setup remove and auth actions. Cool. And in our routes, okay, so it generated these routes. Let's see how they're available. Okay, we have WebAuthn setup. Yeah, that's good enough for now. And that's good enough for our purposes. So yeah, we'll generate a form for the WebAuthn setup path with method post, and we'll also make it an inline form. So I will mark it as row. So I installed Bootstrap here, so just to make it look nicer by default. And we'll have a submit button, which will say create passkey, and it will be a primary button. How does it look now? Okay, so we'll just reduce it, the width of it. We'll use call to. Okay, and now we want this button to actually do something. So what Rodauth requires is that we send WebAuthn setup param, WebAuthn setup challenge, and WebAuthn setup challenge HMAC. So let's show this in the console, just to illustrate this. We will call, it's called WebAuthn on this Rodauth class that we have. We'll call WebAuthn setup params method. This is defined by these WebAuthn features that we loaded, and we'll pass the account for which we're generating, and that's the we'll just pass a user ID here. I forgot to tell Rodauth what our new tables are called, so let's modify this here. We will say, I think it's WebAuthn yeah, let's look at the docs. I forgot. I can never remember. It's called the WebAuthn keys table. We call this WebAuthn credentials, and WebAuthn keys account ID column we've called user ID. And then we also have this WebAuthn users table, and I think that's user IDs. That's called user IDs. Yeah, user IDs table, and that's user IDs account ID column. It was also that. And now when we reload and try to generate, it succeeds. So you see it returns these WebAuthn setup params. Basically we need to the server needs to generate parameters to give to JavaScript, and then on the client side we will initiate a passkey creation flow, and then the result is submitted back to the server. So that's how the flow goes. In our case, in the home index section, we need to generate WebAuthn params. This home page, the authentication-zero set up all actions to require authentication by default. So here we can rely that the current user exists. WebAuthn setup params. Yes. So I'm seeing the comment from Long Tran. Yes, I'm using Rodauth Rails this time because it requires less setup. So, and also because it offers this migration generator, which is convenient. But yeah, like in my previous attempt, I used Rodauth directly, but that required a bit more setup. Yeah. I'll enable wrapping here just so that we see everything. We'll pass the account ID, or maybe we'll just multi-line IDs. We'll pass the account ID like we did in the console. We'll grab the current user ID. Yeah, I'll just inline it. Cool. And then here we will pass the challenge. So from WebAuthn params, we will pass the WebAuthn setup challenge, and here we will pass the challenge HMAC. And the reason why there are two is this HMAC allows it verifies that only the server can generate this, not some user. And then we have also this WebAuthn setup data, and this will actually need to be will be passed to the client, to JavaScript. For this we will create a stimulus controller. We'll repurpose this hello controller and call it WebAuthn controller, and yeah, I will activate it here, I'll pass the data, controller, WebAuthn, and we'll also pass this data that we say. We'll pass it via stimulus value. So it's WebAuthn params, WebAuthn setup to JSON. We want to pass it as JSON, and then in the controller we will declare that we receive this value. It's called data, and it will be an object. So now the flow will be the user submits the form, and then we listen on that, call WebAuthn setup that we have yet to define, and we'll prevent the default submission because we need to wait for the passkey to be created, and only then do we want to continue with the submission. So we'll prevent submission, and then the JavaScript will create a passkey and write the result to this WebAuthn setup param. So we'll mark this as a target, WebAuthn target. We'll mark this as with result, and yeah, here we'll also declare this result target. Now to implement the actual passkey flow on the client side, this is actually for WebAuthn. There is a native JavaScript API, but it's pretty verbose. It's pretty user unfriendly. The built-in API. You see, we have to do a lot of massaging of some inputs, some really complicated stuff, and I don't want to write this. I don't want to have this in my code, so I will use this WebAuthn JSON package from GitHub. Yeah, we'll use that, and this provides a much nicer interface over the vanilla web authentication API. So we will add this package to our project. I need to call yarn add, and we'll import everything as WebAuthn JSON from GitHub WebAuthn JSON package. So here we will say, yeah, not in connect, but we'll call this setup action that when the user submits the form, and we'll say, yeah, just in case, I realized I maybe didn't explain it. This is maybe not, I don't know that many people who know this stimulus API, but I'll just show it just in case. You can see what stimulus.js. You can see that I'm not using Safari. I only used it. Reject all. Got it. Okay. I'm only using it for because it has better support for passkeys or native. Actions have options, and it's like a shorthand for like preventing something or like doing something. So :prevent is a shorthand for calling prevent default on the event object. I just kind of like this to use this sometimes. So in the setup, WebAuthn JSON can also be used with import maps. That's correct. You only need, it requires ES modules, so it cannot be imported like using sprockets, or not at least the standard way, but import maps, they use ES modules, so you can import it there. In fact, the official demo application for Rodauth, it uses import maps. Yeah. So we will call web authn JSON create. That's the method for creating a passkey. It receives this, and here we have to pass this value that the server generates. So we have to pass it here. And we want to await for this result and assign it to a variable. So we want to declare we need to declare the setup as async method function. So at this point, the passkey is created. We receive the result, which includes like IDs, or the browser kind of decides that. And then we will, in our hidden input result target, we will assign this result in JSON format. And then we'll resume submission. So we'll just call request submit on the element, which is the form object in our case. The last thing before we try to create this is I want to display them somewhere. So let's display created passkeys that we've created. I'll create an unordered list here. Current user, web authn credentials. We'll call web authn credentials, and we'll display a list element. And I believe if you look at the schema, we can, for example, for now display this last use, like when it was last used, and later we'll add a nickname, web authn credential last use, just so that we display something. This association doesn't exist yet. We need to define it on the user model. So we'll define has many web authn credentials. We'll delete them when users are destroyed, and we'll create a web authn credential model. It can remain empty. Great, so now when we render this page, there is no Rodauth main. We probably, we didn't restart the application when I created the app.misc directory. And also I'm now seeing that I forgot to register the new controller, stimulus controller. So I guess in this default setup, the stimulus controllers are loaded manually, or registered manually. So I'll import the web authn controller. I'll just use search and replace. I'll replace hello with web authn. Cool. That's a nice little Vim plugin that handles the casing for me. Great, so now when we restart the app, JavaScript will compiled successfully, and we should be able to still render the page. Okay, let's now try creating a passkey. Now see, it triggered a native dialog. This is for now on Mac. It's only available in Safari, but in future macOS versions, or maybe even in the current browsers can interact natively with this API, so it should be available in the near future in other browsers as well. So I will confirm my fingerprint, and nothing happens because what we received is a WebAuthn setup. It says that there is no route that matches because I forgot to declare it as post routes, so all of these should be post routes. I don't know if we can see in the inspector here, or did I already refresh the page? Yeah. So let's try it again, just to show you that it worked. And now we see we received this action, and yeah, I believe that Firefox. Okay, so I tried it with Firefox, and it seems that it doesn't support passkeys through biometric identification. For example, Chrome supports it, but then it stores passkeys in Chrome, and it's not synced across devices. It doesn't touch iCloud keychain. But yeah, Firefox, the last thing I checked, it doesn't. It seems to have support for security keys like YubiKeys, but not yet fingerprint. So, and I don't have a YubiKey or hardware yet. Great, so we see that we received some parameters, and now we need to handle them on the server. And the WebAuthn controller will call Rodauth main WebAuthn setup. We'll pass the current user ID, and WebAuthn setup will be passed from WebAuthn setup, and the same for challenge, and challenge HMAC, not all computers have some biometric identification, so yeah, that's true. So it's like in this case you don't need to use a security key. I believe this is everything, and let's immediately then, so once we created a passkey, or once we saved the passkey on the server side, it was already created on the client side, we'll redirect to the root path, back to the root path with a notice, passkey successfully created. And here I just want to say, so for, yeah, I think that's everything. So let's test this out now. We'll create a passkey again. Great, it was successfully created, and it was listed there with the current timestamp. So passkey creation flow worked. That was easy. So let's add some kind of nickname to this passkey. I'll add and generate a migration, add nickname to WebAuthn credentials, because it's good to allow people to create multiple passkeys, because for backup, because for example, if they're using a security key, then that passkey will remain on the security key, so when that piece of hardware is lost, then you lose the passkey. So it's always good to have some redundancy. And Apple passkeys, they are synced across devices, but I don't know if you decide to switch to Android. At the moment, it seems that passkeys are platform specific. So I don't know, you cannot import Apple passkeys into an Android password manager or something. That's as far as I know. Maybe that will improve in the future. So in this migration, add nickname. We'll say change table, or maybe just add column on web authn credentials. We'll add a nickname. It will be a string, and it can be nullable. Yeah, that's fine. So in our form, we'll add a text field. We'll add text field with nickname. It will have some placeholder, like, I don't know, if we are storing it in iCloud keychain, then we can call it like this. And yeah, it will have some kind of class of, I think, form control. Great, so we have it here. Maybe let's make it a bit wider so that this placeholder is not cut off. Okay, now when we submit this form, we will receive the nickname, and then we'll forward it in our WebAuthn controller. We'll forward it to Rodauth. And we have to forward it as like a custom parameter because Rodauth doesn't otherwise know about it. And then we'll override the WebAuthn key insert hash. I believe that's how it's called. Configuration method. And we'll call super. So maybe we can just call this credential. We'll call super with credential and add that nickname field, a nickname parameter. So this is the hash that will be inserted in the database. Yeah, that's it. And then finally, we want to, instead of this timestamp, we want to display the nickname. Great. And so now first we need to remove all of the WebAuthn credentials. So I'll just grab the current user, because WebAuthn, for one email address, I can only generate one passkey for in specific password storage. So in this case, iCloud keychain. WebAuthn first, WebAuthn credentials, destroy all. Or maybe WebAuthn credential. Okay, I guess I forgot to reload. Great, so we've removed it. We create passkey, call it iCloud keychain. And that works. Perfect. So now that we created the passkey, let's now implement authentication with it. In the sign-in page, we'll add a button to authenticate via passkey. So in this, it's the session new template. Below here, we'll add a form which will go to WebAuthn auth path with method post. And we'll also load the same stimulus controller. And copy all of these fields, then which are the same, but just instead of setup, it's called auth. So we'll replace setup with auth, and we'll also pass this WebAuthn data value. We'll pass WebAuthn params WebAuthn auth to JSON. Okay, and we'll have the submit button that will give authenticate or sign in with a passkey. It will be a button primary, and it will trigger this it will trigger the new WebAuthn auth function, which we had to define, and also prevent the default submission. So first, let's we didn't define this instance variable. Let's do that. In the session controller, we'll say WebAuthn params, and now since we're not logged in, we will don't have the current user. We will call Rodauth main WebAuthn login params. So now it's for login, not for setup. And that's it. I think we don't need to pass anything else. Great. And we'll also do that here in the create action when we're it's redirecting. Okay, then we don't need to assign it here. I thought it would be rendering an invalid response. Okay, so great. That's everything. We have WebAuthn params set up. Let's see. Let's test it out in the console, just that you know how it looks like. Similar format, just for different purposes, for authentication instead of creation. On the JavaScript side, we will define an async auth function. We will call, it will look almost exactly the same, but instead of create, it will call get here. It will also pass a public key. This the data, and that's this data, and I'll just copy paste. It's exactly the same. We authenticate with a passkey and then assign the result so that the server verifies the authentication. And now when I restart the application, I have this passkey, authenticate with passkey, and something wasn't hooked. Nothing happens when I click on this button. Okay, let's see. Does some network request happen? Okay, it makes a sign-in request. Strange. Let's see in the server logs. So it made an auth request, storable stream. It just didn't activate the JavaScript part. So maybe I just misconfigured something there. Yes, class controller, yes. I need to pass it as a data attribute. Right, that explains it. I believe it's this first one. I see I've created many passkeys for localhost. So it will only offer passkeys for this concrete website, and this makes it non-phishable. This makes passkeys not phishable. Someone cannot create a fake domain that looks like the application that you regularly visit, because it will be a different domain, and then the passkey simply won't be offered. Now I confirm my fingerprint, and I don't think I implemented the authentication part. Yeah, I didn't. We received a post request, but we didn't implement it. In the WebAuthn controller, we will implement this. It will be almost the same. Login. I don't know, maybe we can call this login. Yeah, let's do that. Login, and in the session new controller will say WebAuthn login path. Here we don't pass the current user because there is none. We are just logging in, and we need to actually skip authentication for this action. So I'll skip the authenticate before action only for login action. And here we pass these similar parameters, but just with auth instead of setup. If I refresh the page, and yeah, I also want to make a redirect. We'll redirect to a successfully logged in or something, but yeah, okay, we'll successfully, maybe passkeys successfully authenticated for now, just to verify that it works. Authenticated. Okay, we'll do it again. Great, we've the passkey authentication works. We just didn't log in, so we are still on the sign up page. We will look at the session controller for that. Here in this create action, yes, this part is important. So this part is what actually signs in the user. It creates a session in the database, session record, and then it stores it in the cookie. We will, since here, and here, this WebAuthn login method will return the user ID of the logged in user. And then here we'll just call session create and pass this user ID here. And you will also use the exact same flash message, because it's also signed in, just with different method. Now when we try this again, it says no WebAuthn key given with given ID found. Not sure why I didn't receive this error the last time. I think it's because I used the wrong one. I think that probably this one isn't the one that I created. And that's unfortunate. So I mean, in testing I will have multiple, but like realistically you would have only one in a real website. So I'll try this one. Maybe that's the one that I created. Nope. So I'll try then the last one. Okay, I lost track. Maybe this one? Probably not, but yeah, this is I wish I can delete them from my cloud keychain. I'll try to do that again. Maybe here in the keychain. They're stored here, but I don't know exactly where. So I think there is this local host, and there is 3,000. Yeah, I don't know. They wouldn't be stored here. So that's maybe keys. Nope. No, I don't know. Or maybe if I say order them by recently modified, go to the last ones. Yeah, no, I don't think I will have much luck here. So I'll just try again. I'll try the first one again, and then I'll try this one. Great, okay, that one worked. Okay. I wish I knew how to delete the other ones, because the problem with passkeys is that when you delete them from the database, they still remain stored on the like on the password manager on the client side. There isn't currently a way to tell that this browser can tell the password manager to delete the passkey. I don't know if that's intentional or if it's I don't know, missing feature. The last thing I wanted to show was, so we have passkey creation, we have login with a passkey, that works great, and now I want to just implement deleting passkeys, because users might want to do that when they're not using some password manager or something anymore. We will, in the home page, we'll add the delete button here. Form with URL webauth and remove path. So it will be remove path method post, and it will have class of inline. Sorry, it will be displayed inline. We'll display one delete button that will have that will be red, and we also need to include the WebAuthn ID of that credential. So we'll include that in the hidden field WebAuthn ID, and it will have value of WebAuthn credential WebAuthn ID. Cool. And now when we see the delete button is displayed, and in our WebAuthn controller we will call WebAuthn remove. We will pass the current user that's required here, and we'll pass this WebAuthn ID param in this WebAuthn remove option. Here are the steps to delete a passkey. Yeah, this is what I'm now implementing. Well, I'll say, okay, notice passkey successfully fully deleted. And let's try this out. Deleted, great. Successfully deleted, it's no longer displayed. Perfect, that works. Before I end this stream, I just want to add some basic handling of the set path when creation of uh, passkeys or authentication doesn't work for whatever reason. If that happens, Rodauth will raise an internal request error. And then what we can do here is say just, well, in this case we'll redirect to root path with an alert, and we'll display the alert whatever Rodauth would return as a flash message. And we'll do the same for login. Here instead we'll redirect to the sign-in path. Yeah. Let's try this out now. Here we'll create a passkey. Perfect. And now we'll create another one. And remember when I said that for the same account you cannot have two passkeys. So now Rodauth should complain, or something should complain, that this one cannot be created. I don't know if I... here. At least one match. Okay, this failed on the JavaScript side, so it didn't even reach the server. It says that it's not unique. So maybe I don't know how to trigger it. Okay, maybe now we can try to log in with a wrong, at least to try with the wrong key passkey here. Let's say that this one is definitely wrong. Now it should not be found. Yes. There was an error authenticating. We have WebAuthn. That's returned directly from Rodauth. That will be the flash message. So we have the basic set path covered. And that's everything I wanted to show you for this stream. Thank you for watching. I hope to do it again soon.